What's going on at Ohio State? A lot of answers to that question depending on who you ask. But I'm going to start with the landscape here. That program went 11-1, and the fan base turned up to DEFCON 3. That program was a possession away from beating Michigan on the road, and that program went to DEFCON 3. Ryan Day has already said what he's been saying. We can't keep doing this. I understand. This is not who we are. And it's not the 11 games. It's not being a top 25 team, top 5 team. It's losing to Michigan. This is why everybody's so mad and upset in Columbus. And as a dude that ain't from there but respects the get down, I respect the get down. Your standard is beating Michigan, and he ain't hitting the standard. All right. So what is he going to do about it? That was the question that was asked, because for like 3 days there, lots of conversation about whether or not he's going to be the head coach at Ohio State, which, again, I don't know of another program that would want to fire a dude after he had 11 wins, but that's Ohio State. So you get 12 players going into the transfer portal in just the first 24 hours since that portal had opened, highlighted by not just Kyle McCord, but also Julian Fleming, who was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2020 class. And that dude can go into the portal because you didn't use him enough, which is wild to think about. He was your 3rd best wide receiver for perhaps the last 2 years, but certainly this year. And this is a dude that was also playing with Garrett Wilson, right? With Chris Olave, with Marvin Harrison Jr., and with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that dude's going to be outstanding. I really wanted to see him break out in a real way. Couldn't really happen in the position that he was playing at Ohio State, as you also got a guy like Xavier Johnson working into the mix, even at a time when Marvin Harrison Jr. was becoming the offense and Emeka Egbuka was out in games. You still didn't make Julian a featured part of the offense, which could lead that dude to going into the portal. I get it. But seeing that number of players on scholarship decide that they need to go do something else leads me to also believe Ryan Day is in a cleaning house kind of period. There's some things that have to change. There's some players that they need to get in. There's players that they might need to get out. It's going to be more of this in the coming, not just weeks, but months. Remember, the transfer portal basically is a 9-month process at this point. We got days for when it's open. We got days for when it's closed, but we'll be back here talking about this in the spring. We're going to have probably at least 3 more periods where we actually do a transfer portal segment of the show between now and January, now in March, now in April, and even perhaps in May or June, depending on what's on and popping as we get closer and closer to the start of the 2024 season, which will, again, be unprecedented because 12-team playoff, and there are 18 teams in the in the Big Ten, and 16 teams in the SEC, and there is no Pac-12. Like, there's already going to be stuff we've never seen before, even as we've never seen an undefeated Power 5 champion left out of a 14 playoff that is supposed to be made up of undefeated Power 5 champions, if there are such a thing that year. I'm never going to let that go. And I'm not even a Florida State guy. I'm just not going to let it go. It's always going to bother me. It's always going to bother me. They also got a flip at defensive line, and Justin Scott deciding to go to Miami instead of sticking at Ohio State. But I'm looking at Jeremiah Smith, and I'm going, I wonder who he wants to be the quarterback, because that dude is outstanding. Like, he's going to join a wide receiver group that features also Brandon Ennis, who's outstanding, Carnell Tate, who's outstanding, Mega Buka. They got dudes. Like, they are going to be out there with the TIE fighters taking on the Empire if they're given the opportunity with a great quarterback. And that's what it's going to be about. I am more curious about who the starting quarterback will be against Missouri than I've ever been about a starting quarterback against Missouri. Because I understand y'all having the best season y'all had since 2014, but I'm an Oklahoma fan. I remember y'all wasn't no good. I remember it. You had 1 year, 08, Chase Daniel, Jeremy Maclin, cool, good for you. But I want to see if Devin Brown is the starting quarterback or Lincoln Kienholz is starting quarterback, because I think that's going to tell us a lot about the next guy to go into the transfer portal. It would not surprise me to see one or both, honestly, because I think that Kyle McCord going into the portal basically telegraphs they're going to go get somebody. But here's Ryan Day's quote on Sunday in reference to this thing. Right now, we're not actively out there searching for anything other than we'll see what the next month brings in all positions. I mean, you recruiting, dog. Like, we always recruiting. Everybody's always recruiting. Everybody's always open at all positions, just like every position is always being challenged. There are no starters until we start playing football games. And even after the game ends, you got to compete for your spot again. Yada, yada, yada. Coach speak, coach speak, coach speak. Devin Brown didn't leave Canyon Corner to go to Ohio State to not be the starter. And he would love nothing more than to run around with number 33 on his back, which is still wild, throwing passes. I don't care if it was Sammy Ball's number. It's still wild for a quarterback to be wearing 33 in the pocket. You gonna have me thinking that dude's a tailback, and maybe not for the best, right? So Devin Brown, what does he provide? He provides a level of mobility that neither C.J. Stroud nor Kyle McCord had, but C.J. Stroud could do without and be great. Kyle McCord needed to have it. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's his first year as the starter as opposed to CJ's first year in 2021 when people were claiming that he needed to be benched for Kyle McCord, if you'll remember, because fan bases are never happy, and the dudes that's sitting on the back is always the better option. I'm curious to see if they actually put into play some of those runs that we saw Devin Brown with at the beginning of the year, but also damn near got him hurt, right? And we've already seen that dude was hurt a little bit in the preseason. We're going to ask about his injury. We're going to ask about injury prevention. People are going to pull Mickey Mariotti's chain, even if it doesn't need to be pulled that way. But if he plays lights out against Missouri, that's probably going to be your guy going into 2024, because that's going to be a really great proving ground for him. Now, if it is not, Lincoln Kienholz might be a really good dude to have there because he's got a year in your system. He arrived late coming out of South Dakota. I think he's just the second ever player that Ohio State has signed to a scholarship to play football out of the state of South Dakota, where he was outstanding. They play 11A football in South Dakota, by the way. I mean, talk about overkill. Like, they only play 11A football in Texas. 6A is as high as it goes, and even that might be too many, right? We play 6A football in Oklahoma, 5A football. That's where we could start. Anyway, you talk about Lincoln Kienholz. We talk about a dude that played all the sports, showed up in camp in June, right? Wanted to finish out the season in high school, and has basically got to sit there and watch, and not knowing that he's probably not going to be the dude that's up for the job next year, because everybody expected Kyle McCord to have a great year or Devin Brown to have a great year, and then he would sit and wait. But now, thrust into it, I kind of want to see it. But that's what Ryan Day has done. He's always had a dude back there that I kind of want to see, right? And in 2019, excuse me, he made the mistake of just not getting Jack Miller or C.J. Stroud opportunities to get onto the field, throw passes, right? He really wanted to do that. Didn't really work out. I think he wants to do that from now on with these dudes, which is why you got to see last year C.J. Stroud take a seat and Kyle McCord come in there to start throwing passes, right? Like, that was important to him. One, get that dude some feel and some comfort, and also have some tape to reference come the spring, right? You want a quarterback to be able to throw the ball in his offense, but if you can move back to some of what you were doing with Urban Meyer, I don't think anybody's going to tell you that you can't or frown upon it, because turns out Ohio State is like every other Power 5 quarterback institution. When you got a Power 5 quarterback that's a passer, you're like, why don't you run more? Because I'm a passer. Even Jalen Milroe got to deal with this. He got to tell people, I throw the football first. I run the football as a last resort. C.J. Stroud was getting dinged for throwing for 300 yards and not running for 100. It's just what they want up there. But this time, I think that they're in a good spot with either one of those dudes, Lincoln or Devin Brown, to go do some of that. And that might give you an edge, right? That might give you the edge that you are looking for to go undefeated, which is what they want at Ohio State. You got to get to Michigan, then you got to beat Michigan, and then we'll see. I'm curious to see what comes into the out of the portal to Ohio State, because they always do a good job, but they've never been so heavily invested in it as I think they're about to be. And if that is the case, Ohio State will go get what they want. It's just, is there a whole bunch out there that they absolutely do want? That's going to be the question.
If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.